Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nick Carter. I'm Chief Executive at West Berkshire Council. I haven't got any slides, but I was just asked to say a few words around the local economy and economic recovery. And I think both Gary and Matt have highlighted the fact that health and well-being involves a whole range of different factors, and people's economic well-being is undoubtedly a key part of that. And unemployment was one of those factors that Matt had in one of his slides. So I'll give you one or two figures, but I think it's fair to say that we're still not entirely clear what the economic impact of COVID-19 is going to be. And indeed, COVID-19 is still with us. So there's a lot of uncertainty. But the starting point, I think, from some of the research that has come out over the last 2 or 3 months reinforces what Matt was saying, which is that we are a relatively affluent area, and actually on lots of the domains, health, economy, etc., we are seen to be, in theory, a fairly COVID resistant area in terms of potential impacts. And we sit in probably one of about 20 or 30 local authorities in the country that are seen to potentially not be as adversely affected as other areas. So there is something, I suppose, to take from that. And when you look at some of the economic indicators, we have a pretty well-balanced economy in West Berkshire, and we have a relatively high number of industries that are seen to be relatively unaffected by COVID. And we have a relatively low proportion of people furloughed at the moment as well. So all of that, I suppose, is positive, but there is certainly no room for complacency. And as many of you will know, there are still a large number of people employed in West Berkshire in some of the most vulnerable sectors: retail, hospitality, and tourism. And whilst Slough is probably the area most adversely affected in Berkshire, largely because of Heathrow, that aviation impact actually does come all the way down through West Berkshire. There are still quite a lot of people employed in the aviation industry in West Berkshire. My own view is, when you look at the sort of industrial makeup of West Berkshire, it is our town centres, I think, that are going to be most adversely affected, not only because they tend to have those industries that I've just mentioned, retail and hospitality, but also because I think there is going to be an interesting challenge around people continuing to work from home. And I think that will have an impact on town centres. And I'm sure we'll be having this discussion as a Health and Wellbeing Board in the months to come, in terms of what that impact of people increasingly not coming back to the workplace will be. And we're having those conversations at the council. So from my perspective, I think town centres are going to be the area where we are perhaps going to see the biggest impact, and as a result, the biggest changes. I think the sort of key message I would like to sort of get across is, again, a theme that both Gary and Matt have focused on, and it's this inequality issue. The challenge that we've had as a board, the challenge we've had for many, many years, and we know it, is that, yes, we are a relatively affluent area, and many, many people in West Berkshire live happy and healthy lives. But there is a much smaller proportion that do not, and that gap is quite wide in West Berkshire, and we've been highlighted in the national press on that in recent years. And my view is that gap has almost certainly widened during COVID-19. And I think that is the big challenge for the board. And so for me, I think the big challenge we're going to have is that coming out of COVID, it's certain groups, and I think everybody is sort of the view it's going to be younger workers, younger people and women who are going to be most adversely affected economically by COVID-19. And that, I think, is a significant challenge for us. Where we're going in terms of support, we have, as a local authority, had quite a large amount of funding from the government to pass forward to local businesses, and we have probably passed on at least £20 million during the COVID over the last 6 months to local businesses. We haven't got a lot of our own resources to pass forward. We have some, but where I think our focus will want to be, both as a council but also with the economic development company Newby West Berkshire, is around supporting those most vulnerable groups back into employment. And we've got the Kickstart scheme, which the government has recently announced, which is something we certainly as a council are very keen to work with partners to try and make sure works here in West Berkshire. So that's very much a bit of a quick flavour around where I think things are. It's still very early days. Just to highlight a couple of figures, just to sort of demonstrate that it is having an impact in West Berkshire, because I don't want people to feel it isn't. Our sort of unemployment rate has more than doubled during COVID. It was at a relatively low level, but nevertheless has increased significantly. And the number of people, young people, that are neither in education, employment or training has more than doubled. Now, it did start again at a relatively low level, and we're always very proud of that. But the increase is one of the highest increases in the southeast. And I think it just, again, reinforces the point that actually, I think some groups in our communities are going to be particularly adversely affected by this economically, and we just need to keep a very close eye on that. Kamal, I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you for that summary, Nick. I'm sorry I asked you to jump in and deliver that at the last minute, but thank you.